All right, welcome back. We are here now with David Hall, who's just getting hooked up the screen to start talking about the walkthrough of the rental registry bill.
Grace?
I am Grace.
Second chair.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And maybe I somehow missed it. You had mentioned that this sort of list, it's kind of a two-parter, wouldn't be solicited. You can't sell it to somebody. I'm thinking of, so my husband's grandmother is a very private individual, but she has a grandmother's apartment and she rents it out to somebody she knows. And when they're ready to move on, she rents it out to somebody else she knows. Like, she refuses to advertise it because God forbid anyone knows her business. I know somebody like that would be very concerned about their name, their unit, their address being involved in a list. If I was looking to rent something, would I be able to go to my town office and say, I want to rent in this town. Can you show me the units available?
David, that'll be in the exceptions, I think. But I don't believe the intent was to use it as a Realtor
Okay.
service. And there are exceptions for how people consider their apartments, whether it's for family members or in this case, somebody who is not advertising.
Okay. And then my other question about the $35 registration fee. So would this be an additional $35 to, you had mentioned that Burlington has $115 fee already?
No, they would not have to pay twice.
Okay.
They would have to share their list.
Mm-hmm.
They would not have to,
Have that.
the individuals, Burlington would share their list with the state or allow access to it. And
Thank you.
You ready?
ready.
Okay. Good morning, David Hall, Legislative Council. I am here on H276, an act relating to creating a rental housing registry. As the chair indicated in his introduction to you, these provisions are taken from prior housing bills that you've considered in earlier sessions. I wanted to start, though, before I look at the bill, to frame where you are in the universe. Right now, in Title 32, Section 6069, this is the landlord certificate program. This is, and this has been amended since this past biennium to expand the number and scope of people who need to furnish the certificate of rent to the Department of Taxes, and it's each owner of rental property. And for a number of years, and it's in subsection F on the screen, I don't remember the exact year that this was added, but it was work done in this committee before the pandemic, because we were in the room upstairs that was before you moved to the appropriations room. So whatever year that was, 17, 18, 16, I don't remember. But note here in F that annually on or before October 31st, Department of Taxes shall prepare and make available to a member of the public upon request a database in the form of a sortable spreadsheet that contains the following information for each rental unit for which the department received a certificate, that's the landlord certificate, pursuant to this section of law. So this includes the name of owner or landlord, the mailing address of the landlord, the location of the rental unit, the type of rental unit, the number of units in the building, and the span account. So that is, again, at Department of Taxes. It's by request. It's supposed to be available as a searchable electronic database. And it's these 6 data points, right? You've heard a lot of testimony, and I say you, I'm referring to the institution of this committee. Obviously, that changes year over year. I don't attribute any individualized knowledge to any of you. Don't take that for good or ill, but this committee has heard from the Department of Taxes a lot of testimony on, the extent to which it is the right place for maintaining and disseminating information about rental units, pros and cons and concerns about compliance. And I'm going to defer to tax on, whether, because it's had various testimony about whether this should continue, whether this should migrate, whether it should be expanded. And I don't purport to, speak for their position, but it's important to know this subsection has a history and it is current law. On top of this, we also have the grand list requirements and what data you have to supply and the municipalities have to gather for what they have on their tax rolls. But just based on the testimony publicly that I've heard over the years, that is not uniform. It is different levels of accessibility, searchability. So while it's accurate to say you can go to some municipalities and glean a great deal of information, more information than is here on what types of buildings, units, location, et cetera, all that is available in the town, it is not consistent from town to town, right? So I have heard testimony that concerning this bill, H276, most of the information we would be collecting is available somewhere. I don't know in the real world the extent to which it is available, what is available on a town by town basis. I don't know. What I know is we do have this section of law that, tasks the Department of Taxes with the 6 data points that it collects. And then we have grand lists of varying levels of accessibility and comprehensiveness. So I think it is fair to characterize this as sort of a one-stop location located within the Department of Housing and Community Development that would be tasked with basically, receiving, collating, publishing, using all of this data in one place for the purposes that you've specified in this bill and with the limitations that are prescribed in this bill. But I also want to note that over the course of work that this body has done in the past on this, there are a lot of exceptions too. And so there are these tensions among privacy issues, accessibility of information, the purpose for which this information might be used, the people to whom this information might be given. And I think those are all policy decisions that, you'll want to keep in mind as we're looking at it. So I'm going to go to the language now, unless you have any sort of big picture questions about where we are in the world.
Is there any kind of crossover between what we have already and and this bill and last year's Town Records Modernization Act?
I don't know anything about that act. I'm sorry. I can't tell you that at this point. I can look into it, but right now I have no idea.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So you'll see this is creating in a new section of law within the Department of Housing and Community Development. And this is telling them to coordinate with people who are somehow in touch with or responsible for rental housing. So Division of Fire Safety, which now has primary state level jurisdictional authority over rental housing, health and safety. The Department of Health, which continues to have jurisdiction over public health hazards, public health risks, which can include housing issues still. And the E911 board, which obviously maintains directories of physical addresses and emergency addresses. Department of Taxes, which we just looked at, is charged with those records based on the landlord certificates. So DHCD nominally, working with these other entities, shall create and maintain a registry of rental housing in the state, which includes a dwelling unit as defined in 9 VSA 4451 and a short-term rental as defined in 18 VSA 4301. So those two things together are really trying to capture what you might consider long-term residential housing units, right? And then also STRs as we regulate them over in Title 18. So it's really trying to get every residential type of housing that might be rented. Any questions on those pieces? Because there's always debate about whether, do we mean long-term, do we mean short-term, do we mean both? What if one is used for one? What if it's used for both? What if sometimes I do a short-term rental? What if I'm only, so this is really capturing everybody. Under B here, DHCD shall require for each unit that is registered the following data. So you see here 9 data points, whereas we had 6 in the tax statute. Now we have name and owner of the landlord. That's the same. 2, contact information for the landlord as available. So phone number, email, mailing address. Those are sort of additional to the tax statute. Location of the unit, the year built, the type of rental unit, the number of units in the building, the span number. So you've seen all those before. Accessibility of the unit, and then 9, any other information the department deems appropriate. So I know there was a lot of discussion about 9 last year. It's still there in this draft. C, upon request of the DHCD and at least annually, a municipal district or other local government entity that operates a health and safety program that requires registration of a rental housing unit and a fee for inclusion shall provide the department the data for each unit that is required pursuant to subsection B. So this construct is intended to strike a balance between the burden you're placing on owners by not making them register and pay twice, but also ensuring that the state, again, has all of this information in one location. So it's putting the onus here on municipalities, basically, or other districts, could be a regional, not that there are any, but it could be, to annually communicate to DHCD what information they have about registered units. So D here, the registry and the data collected by the registry shall be protected pursuant to 1 VSA 317C2. This is the Public Records Act. It may only be released to specifically designated persons who, in the discretion of the department, shall use such data to further the public good. Registry data may not be disclosed to entities for the purposes of solicitation campaigns without express authority granted by the department. Data about a specific unit may be disclosed to the owner or operator of the rental unit regulated by the registry for the purpose of informing the owner or operator of its registry status. So are you in good standing? Are you registered how you're supposed to be, etc.? Any questions on that first section?
James?
I just have one. So where do you get at, or how can you easily tell from this information whether any given unit is like, in a long-term lease, vacant, rented 6 weeks a year on Airbnb? Like, where do you get to use of the unit?
Well, so none of this explicitly requires use. When it says in 5, the type of rental unit, I could envision the department setting this up to, have a field that says long-term or short-term or both. Does it get down to the granular level of the actual type of use, the duration of use? I don't know. It's at least theoretically possible they could set it up that way. This does not require that.
Representative Parsons.
Thank you. So in C there,
Yes.
any municipality that has a similar program would have to conform to what we are asking for information. If they don't, I mean, they might already, I don't know, but I'm just saying, if they don't have accessibility to the unit, they're gonna have to.
Right, I think that's a good point. Yes, the way that C is written, basically, like I said, it puts the onus on the municipality. And it says at the end, shall provide to the department the data for each unit that is required pursuant to subsection B. So we would need somehow, right, to gather the same information at least and convey that to the state.
But they might have some that we don't even ask for, but they might also not have some that we do.
And they would then probably have to scale it up to get that same type of data, yes.
Representative Krasnow.
And so currently, as mentioned, there are a few municipalities who are already doing this. I know my community is looking into doing it as well. So similar to what Joe was saying. So for Burlington that already does this, would the fee, do they use the higher fee for other things or to support their program? Would that change, or would theirs go down to match the program?
They would presumably keep their own system in place and their own fee structure in place. We're not there to it. We're about to get to it.
Oh,
But
sorry.
basically, if you have to pay a fee to municipality for their program, you don't also have to pay it to the state.
Okay. All right, and enforcement, do small towns have the capacity? I know in South Burlington, we have the capacity to have enough folks to run it, but I don't.
So this is not changing anything about what a municipality can or can't do. I mean, they don't have to have their registration program. This is just saying if a municipality does have a comparable health and safety program that requires registration and fees, then they can keep it and they have to interface with the state. It doesn't require a municipality that doesn't currently have one to set it up.
But the ones that don't have them, like in a small town, would that be overwhelming for them, or it would be a state program completely?
This is state only, and that's sort of
Okay.
the point. I mean,
Right.
I think the reality that I think everybody can agree on is that most municipalities don't have the capacity
That was my
to run their own
concern.
program,
Okay,
which is, you know.
right.
So last year, again, the reallocation of authority to fire safety was, to basically make a state, based inspection regime. I mean, it's not sufficient number of people to really do the whole state, but it is,
Right.
a step in that direction, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. So with kind of, as I was mentioning there, so you could have this with Burlington, and South Burlington doesn't have this program. So you could have a situation where a landlord pays $110, $115, and 2 streets over pays $35. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, that's weird.
based on what municipality that you're in. Yep.
Representative Barlow.
And going to section D, so the registry hypothetically could be disclosed for solicitation purposes if the department thinks that's okay.
Yes. With express authority granted by the department. Other questions?
Let's just stop there. We're at section 2, right?
Yep.
So we'll come back to this as soon as we can. For the walkthrough, I just want to take a break before we start start talking about the budget and make sure we have our next conversation lined up. And David, we'll see you this afternoon on H111.
Yes.
We'll be seeing David more frequently. We've been dealing with housing.
Yay.
Oh,